A guide to Sauran's secrets. Time has been favorable to its walls, but is ruthless to its secrets. Sauran, on the border of Kyzylorda and Turkestan regions. The huge walls are perfectly preserved. It's a wonderful city. It is unique in its preservation. Unique not only in the archaeological sense. The architecture of this ancient city is not ordinary. An important point of the Great Silk Road, Sauran is often mentioned in medieval annals. But even numerous records in excellent preservation still do not allow scientists to come close to its solution. It was one of those mysterious cities on the Great Silk Road. Why is it called wandering, and why did the Sauran residents leave the city for good? How many pumpkins do you need to build an underground water supply, and what did the medieval poet talk about? How to unravel the secret of the rocking minarets, and what does Spanish Catalonia have to do with it all? Guide about the secrets of Sauran. Where is the Sauran which existed before the Mongol invasion? For the first time in Kazakhstan, only irrigation systems were found in this city. The secret has not yet been revealed. Chapter 1. Wandering City. Sauran's fortress is a fortified stronghold, such a strong and powerful fortress that the hand of rotation of fate never reached the front of its shaft, and did not see the eye of the blue sky on 1/4 of the inhabited part of the globe. Like its stronghold, Hafesi Bukhari, the Book of Shah's Glory. A fortress of such exceptional height and majesty that no one thought of destroying the tower and its shaft. The chronicler admired, however, this is not the first words of delight recorded in written sources. It's mentioned for the first time in the historical sources, in the writings of an Arab geographer. The Arab geographer Al-Muhaddasi in the 10th century describes Sauran in great detail. A big city surrounded by 7 walls, a frontier fortress against the Guz and Kimak tribes. But what is surprising, the 7 walls described by the Arab geographer were not found by the scientists. Moreover, according to the archaeologists, these beautifully preserved ruins date back to the 7th century. Archaeologists for a long time could not understand, where can they find the famous Sauran of an earlier period? So which Sauran early medieval writers wrote about? Where is it located? The city couldn't suddenly migrate. And if it has still happened, then for what reason did the huge settlement change its address? Al-Muqaddas's records help to calculate the 7-viewed Sauran. There is another Sauran which had these 7 gates, 7 thresholds. The answer was very close, about 3 kilometers from the current Sauran. The Karatobe settlement is an early Sauran, which is called Karatobe, which means Black Mountain. This is an early Sauran, which is described in many medieval sources. Traces of 4 walls were found on the territory of this site. Where are the remaining 3? It's not yet clear. Scientists have suggested that the Arabic writer used the sacred number 7 to strengthen the description of the inaccessibility of the city. But then why did residents leave such a fortified city? The question is, what is the history of the city's decline, or why has the city disappeared? Some researchers have suggested that the plague epidemic was the reason for the move. Together with the merchant caravans that have become very convenient means of transportation for plague, rats and fleas, the pandemic reached almost all corners of the world. Perhaps it came from China, perhaps from the steppe. But at this time, we can't imagine the plagues that took over the horde settlements. In those years, a terrible Black Death went along the roads of the East, touching with its fingers nomads and their houses. It's believed that the Black Death, which devastated half the world, originated in China. Through Central Asia, it moved to the Black Sea and sailed to Western Europe, holding on to the masts of Genoese ships. Sergei Markov, The Earth's Cycle. Or was Sauran destroyed by the invasion of Genghis Khan's troops? It's not clear. Or maybe the whole thing is that new Sauran turned out to be more convenient and gradually the old Sauran residents changed their place of residence. Chapter 2. Medieval Technology. We just entered through the main highway. It led us to the square. And now, on the square opposite to each other, there were madrasas. You see how the excavations are underway. They opened these madrasas. The arts from the 16th century is still preserved. The secret of the unusual preservation of the city, one of the few, scientists have already explained. It's all about local clay. It gives bricks a special resistance. Sauran building materials preserved for the world, another majestic monument of the Turkestan region, the mausoleum of Khoja Ahmed Yazawi. The Sauran brick was handed over for the construction of the Khoja Ahmed Yazawi mausoleum, down the 35-kilometer line from hand to hand. It's difficult to imagine a 35-kilometer chain of people. This is the distance between Sauran and Turkestan. But a beautiful legend may tell it to be a reality, only a bit exaggerated. It was a very popular building material, and again, it's still a mystery, and it's impossible to reveal the composition of the bricks. For more than 10 years, we have studied this composition. We found something close to the old technology. It's difficult to reveal the secret of the ancient masters. One thing is clear, people built it for centuries. But why did they do it in a waterless desert? Archaeologists were surprised. By the way, written sources assure us that it was a flourishing settlement in the literal sense. An extraordinarily pleasant city. It was built in an open, flat steppe. It is extremely cheerful, bright, with soft, invigorating air, which will give the mind joy and strength. All over the district there are all sorts of beautiful trees. Fazala Isfahani, Notes of the Bukhara Guest. The gardens of Sauran disappeared alas without a trace, and there's no water nearby, not even a drop. There are no rivers, no lakes. The whole city could not live only on an imported source of water. In addition, they had to water the parks. The answer was found over the city. Aerial photography showed that there is a chain of wells near Sauran. The Kyzylorda system is an irrigation system. As you can see, there are no sources in these places, and underground water fell from the mountains to these places. In support of the excavation, there were written evidence. The medieval poet Vasafi claims that a unique irrigation system was built at the beginning of the 16th century. Wells were made at a depth of 4 meters. These wells were then connected with each other. The water supply system was pulled from the foothills of the Karatal Ridge. The total length of the tunnels is 120 kilometers. The shortest KRIS is 700 or 800 meters. The longest KRIS was 8 to 15 kilometers. Such data was preserved. 6 kilometers of the underground corridor cost about an ingot of gold the size of a sheep's head. Some branches were built at the expense of patrons. One of them remained in history. Amir Abdullah brought 200 slaves from India for construction. Hard labor in inhumane conditions. The air in the well deteriorated and it became impossible to work. Then, on one side of the well, they dug up the course and missed something like a sleeve, stitched from leather through it. Blacksmiths put the sleeves on the head of the sleeves and pumped the air, while the excavators worked. They tied up 2 pumpkins on their thighs so as not to drown in water suddenly filled up a fountain. Zain ad-Din Wasafi, amazing events. It was also not easy to maintain them. Only special people were allowed to be caretakers. Each specialist gave an oath of non-disclosure. The tunnels were used for other purposes as well. The rulers could leave the city unnoticed, for example, during a siege. From Sauran there was probably an underground passage to Sauran. This is almost 20 kilometers. The complex irrigation system worked for several centuries. For the same period, New Sauran existed in the midst of the hot desert. Chapter 3: Dancing Minarets. One of the first journalists of Sauran, Vasifi, thanks to whom scientists learned the details of construction of a unique water supply system. He also left a description of another Sauran innovation. At this place there was a swinging tower. Not just one tower, minarets of extraordinary height and extreme mobility. Special chains were attached to the bottom of their columns. A log was attached under the domes of each minaret, so if someone sets the log in motion with force, the chain oscillates and sets the opposite minaret in motion. It appears that the minaret will collapse, and this is one of the wonders of the world. Zain ad-Din Wasafi, amazing events. The Mufti rocked the 12-meter towers in its minarets, tugging them by special beams. And the crowd of spectators was amazed. An eyewitness described this wonderful action. Masters showed their skill. Even now people construct interesting buildings. Unusual houses are being built with some peculiarities. It was similar back then. It was hardly a simple demonstration of a difficult sight. Maybe it was a certain religious ritual, and maybe medieval cities competed with each other in a struggle to attract merchants. Sauran, Signak, Suzak, Sauran, Turkestan, Tashkent, up to Bukhara. These same cities were the cradle of Islamic civilization. In the same place, architecture and art flourished. Some experts believe this is a physical illusion. The audience only thought that the minarets were swinging. They say that such towers are preserved in Iran. But even there, the researchers do not risk revealing secrets. To figure out the mechanism of minarets, they will have to be disassembled. Some of these minarets are still preserved in the photographs, but unfortunately the very know-how of the construction of these minarets, unfortunately, it's been lost. Sauran residents have never revealed their secrets. Wonderful minarets were dismantled for building materials at the beginning of the last century. Epilogue: Spanish Trail. Mysterious Sauran. The ancient city is parting with its secrets reluctantly and still attracts tourists, archaeologists and historians. Each city had its own specialization, its own specific image. If Otrar was the center of scientific thought, then Turkestan is the center of religious thought. Then Sauran is the center of mystical thought. But perhaps the biggest mystery of the medieval city lies in its name. Says the researcher of Sauran, Yerbalat Smagulov. And to learn more about it, you need to travel to more, and no less, to distant Catalonia. There is a Muslim fortress with a similar name and history, and so the search continues.